The champagne glass trembled in Amara Jefferson's hand as she stood in the grand ballroom of the Montgomery estate, surrounded by 500 guests she did not know. Her reflection stared back at her from the gilded mirrors lining the walls, and for a moment she did not recognize herself. The woman in the emerald green wedding gown, with tears threatening to spill down her brown cheeks, looked like a stranger playing a part in someone else's story. 3 months. That was all it had taken for her life to become this unrecognizable thing. 3 months ago she was teaching third graders their multiplication tables in a modest classroom in Brooklyn. 3 months ago she had never heard the name Lucas Montgomery. 3 months ago she had still believed that love could not be bought, sold, or wagered like chips in a casino. She was wrong. Across the room, her husband of exactly 47 minutes stood with his back to her, laughing with a circle of men in expensive suits. His laughter cut through the string quartet's melody, sharp and careless. He had not looked at her once since they said their vows. Not once since he slid the 4-carat diamond onto her finger. Not once since he sealed their union with a kiss so cold it felt like pressing her lips to marble. Amara set down her champagne, the bubbles going flat like her hope. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to remember how she had ended up here, standing in a fairy tale that felt more like a prison. It had started with a bet. She didn't know that then. She wouldn't know it for many months. But somewhere in this very room, perhaps standing among those laughing men, was the person who had turned her life into a game. Let us go back. Let us return to the night when Lucas Montgomery made the worst decision of his life. 3 months earlier, Lucas Montgomery stood at the center of an exclusive gala at the Sterling Crown Hotel in Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the crowd of New York's wealthiest elite. Women draped in diamonds floated past. Men with fortunes measured in billions exchanged handshakes and secrets. Lucas was bored. At 32 he had everything money could buy. A penthouse overlooking Central Park. A yacht docked in Monaco. A car collection worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. And yet, standing there in his tailored navy suit, he felt nothing. The champagne tasted flat. The conversation felt hollow. Even the beautiful woman on his arm, a model named Rebecca Torres, failed to hold his attention. "You look miserable," Brandon Cole said, appearing at Lucas's side with a scotch in hand. Brandon was Lucas's oldest friend, if friend was even the right word. They had known each other since prep school, bonded by privilege and proximity rather than genuine affection. Brandon was the kind of man who smiled too wide and laughed too loud, always looking for the next thrill to chase away his emptiness. "I'm fine," Lucas replied, not bothering to sound convincing. "You're not fine. You're bored. You've been bored for years." Brandon leaned closer, lowering his voice. "That's because you have it too easy. Everything comes to you. Money, women, success. You've never had a real challenge." Lucas rolled his eyes. "And I suppose you have a solution." "Actually, I do." Brandon's smile widened, taking on a quality that should have served as a warning. "A bet." "I'm not interested. You haven't even heard it yet." "I don't need to. Your bets are always ridiculous." Brandon shrugged, swirling his scotch. "Fine. I just thought you might want to prove something for once. But if you're scared." The word landed exactly as Brandon intended. Lucas's jaw tightened. He had never backed down from anything in his life. It was his defining trait, the thing that had built his empire and crushed his competitors. Fear was a foreign concept to him. "I'm not scared," Lucas said flatly. "What's the bet?" Brandon's eyes gleamed. "You date and marry women who look like magazine covers. Perfect faces. Perfect bodies. It's so predictable it's boring. So here's my challenge. Marry someone who doesn't fit your usual standards. Someone the world would never expect to see on your arm. Stay married for 1 year. If you can do it, really do it, I'll sign over my shares in coal industries. That's $60 million. Lucas stared at him. "That's absurd." "Is it? Or is it the first interesting thing anyone's proposed to you in years? You want me to marry someone I'm not attracted to? For a year. I want you to prove you're more than a shallow rich boy who only values appearances." Brandon's voice dropped, taking on an edge. "Unless that's all you really are." The words stung because they carried a grain of truth Lucas didn't want to examine. He thought about his father, Gerald Montgomery, who had died 3 years ago. His father had married his mother Patricia for love, not status. They had been happy for 35 years. Real happiness. The kind Lucas had never found despite all his wealth. "And if I lose?" Lucas asked. "You won't lose. You'll quit before the year is up. And when you do, you'll owe me $60 million. Lucas should have walked away. Every instinct told him this was wrong, that no good could come from treating marriage like a business transaction. But pride was a powerful drug, and Lucas had been addicted to it his whole life. Fine, he heard himself say. But I choose who I marry. No setups. Brandon's smile was the smile of a man who had already won. Actually, I already have someone in mind. A matchmaker I know has the perfect candidate. Her name is Amara Jefferson. She's a school teacher from Brooklyn. And she is not your type. Then why would she agree to marry me? Because she doesn't know it's a bet, obviously. The matchmaker will present it as a legitimate arrangement. Successful businessman seeking genuine partnership. She'll think you're looking for something real. Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't just a game. This was deception. This was using another person as a pawn. But $60 million. And more than the money, the chance to prove he was more than what everyone thought. One meeting, Lucas said. If I don't think she's tolerable, the whole thing is off. Brandon extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Lucas Montgomery sealed his fate without knowing that the woman he was about to deceive would become the only person to ever see him clearly. The only person to ever love him for who he really was. The only person who would show him that everything he thought he wanted was worthless compared to what he actually needed. But he didn't know that yet. On that night, surrounded by champagne and chandeliers and the hollow laughter of the wealthy, Lucas thought he was entering a game he could easily win. He had never been more wrong about anything in his life. What would you do if someone you trusted turned your life into a game without your knowledge? Can love ever be real when it starts with a lie? Comment your thoughts below, and if you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure you subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. The coffee shop was called Warm Cup, and it sat on a quiet corner in Brooklyn, far from the gleaming towers of Manhattan where Lucas usually spent his days. He had never been to this part of the city. The buildings were older here, the streets narrower, the people dressed in practical clothes rather than designer labels. Lucas felt out of place in his charcoal gray suit. He felt like a businessman who had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Which, he supposed, was exactly what he was. He checked his watch. The matchmaker had arranged this meeting for 2 o'clock. It was now 2:15. His date was late. His date. He almost laughed at the word. This wasn't a date. This was an inspection. He was here to evaluate whether Amara Jefferson was tolerable enough to serve as his fake wife for a year. The thought made him feel vaguely ill, but he pushed the feeling down. $60 million. Pride. The bet. He was about to leave when the door opened. She walked in wearing a bright red cardigan over a white blouse and blue jeans. Her hair was natural, a crown of black curls that framed her round face. She was plus size with full curves and soft features. Her skin was a warm brown, and when she scanned the coffee shop looking for him, her eyes were the kindest he had ever seen. This was Amara Jefferson. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. She was beautiful. The thought surprised him. It wasn't the kind of beauty he was used to, not the angular, sculpted beauty of models and socialites. It was something warmer, softer, real. She spotted him and smiled, and something in his chest flickered. You must be Lucas, she said, approaching his table. Her voice was gentle but confident. I'm Amara. I'm so sorry I'm late. One of my students had a crisis and I couldn't just leave her. A crisis? She lost her tooth during reading time and thought she was dying. Amara laughed, a warm sound that filled the small space between them. It took some convincing to explain that this was actually a good thing. The tooth fairy was coming. Lucas found himself almost smiling. When was the last time someone had told him a story about a child losing a tooth? When was the last time anyone had spoken to him about something so simple and genuine? Please sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat, setting her purse on the floor beside her. A server came over, and Amara ordered a chai latte with extra cinnamon. Lucas ordered black coffee, suddenly feeling pretentious about his usual complicated espresso drink. So, Amara said, folding her hands on the table. The matchmaker said you're looking for something real. A genuine partnership. Not just appearances. The irony of her words hit him like a blow. She had no idea. This whole thing was about appearances. It was about a bet made by shallow men in an even shallower world. That's right, he heard himself say. The lie came easily. Too easily. Can I ask why? I mean, you're Lucas Montgomery. I looked you up after we were matched. You could have anyone. Why go through a matchmaker? Why me? Good questions. Questions he had rehearsed answers for. I've dated people who wanted my money, he said. My status. My name. I've never dated someone who wanted me. Maybe I'm looking for something different. It was a lie wrapped around a truth. Because somewhere deep inside, beneath all the layers of arrogance and privilege, Lucas did want something different. He just didn't know it yet. Amara studied him for a long moment. Her gaze was steady, searching. He had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing past his suit and his rehearsed answers into something deeper. "You know what I noticed about you?" she said finally. "What?" "Your eyes. They look tired. Not physically tired. Something else. Like you've been performing for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to just be." Lucas's breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to him. No one had ever looked at him and seen exhaustion rather than success. No one had ever noticed the weight he carried behind his confident smile. He didn't know what to say. For the first time in years he was speechless. Amara reached across the table and touched his hand. Just briefly. Just a moment of contact. But it was warm and it was real and it shook something loose inside him. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not nervous," she said. "A billionaire wanting to date a plus-size school teacher from Brooklyn? That's not exactly typical. But the matchmaker said you were looking for authenticity. And that's something I can offer. I don't know how to be anyone other than who I am." "Who are you?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Amara smiled and the warmth of it transformed her face. "I'm Amara Jefferson. I teach 3rd grade at PS 114. I live with my mother because she had surgery last year and needs help. I make the best sweet potato pie in Brooklyn according to my brother Theo. And I believe that kindness is more important than anything else in this world." Lucas looked at this woman, this stranger who had just laid herself bare before him, and felt something shift in his chest. She was genuine. She was real. She was everything the people in his world were not. And he was about to use her for a bet. The guilt was sudden and sharp, but he pushed it down. He had made a deal. He had given his word. And Lucas Montgomery always kept his word, even when that word was poison. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "I'd like that too." They talked for another hour. She told him about her students, about the little boy who insisted on wearing a superhero cape to class every day, about the girl who wrote poems about her pet goldfish. He told her carefully edited stories about his business, avoiding the ruthlessness and focusing on the success. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Thank you for today," Amara said, standing on the sidewalk outside. "I wasn't sure what to expect, but this was nice. You're different than I thought you'd be." "Different how?" "Sadder." She said it simply, without judgment. "But that's okay. Everyone's sad about something. The question is what you do with it." She smiled one last time, then turned and walked away, her red cardigan bright against the fading light. Lucas watched her go, and for the first time since making that terrible bet, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Not because he thought he would lose, but because he was suddenly, inexplicably afraid of winning. He didn't know it yet, but he was already beginning to fall. Already beginning to see that Amara Jefferson was not just a means to an end. She was not just a pawn in a rich man's game. She was the woman who would change everything. Over the next 3 weeks they met 6 more times. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became walks in the park. Every meeting left Lucas more confused and more drawn to her. She made him laugh. She challenged his opinions. She treated him like a person instead of a bank account. And when he finally proposed, kneeling in a restaurant in Manhattan with a ring worth more than her annual salary, she said yes. Not because of the ring. Not because of his wealth. But because she saw something in him worth believing in. She was wrong, of course. At least, she was wrong about who he was at that moment. But she was right about who he could become. She just didn't know yet that her love would be the thing that saved him. The wedding was elegant. The wedding was expensive. The wedding was everything Lucas Montgomery's status demanded and nothing that Amara Jefferson had ever dreamed of. She had always imagined getting married in her mother's backyard, surrounded by family and friends, with her brother Theo walking her down the aisle. Instead, she stood in a grand ballroom filled with 500 strangers, wearing an emerald green gown that had been chosen by a wedding planner she had met twice. The color had been Lucas's suggestion. He said it would complement her skin tone. He was right. When she looked in the mirror before the ceremony, she barely recognized herself. She looked beautiful. She looked like someone who belonged in this world of crystal and gold. But she didn't feel like she belonged. She felt like an imposter wearing borrowed clothes. The ceremony itself was brief. The vows were traditional. When Lucas slid the diamond ring onto her finger, his hand was steady but his eyes were distant. When he kissed her to seal their union, his lips were cold. Something was wrong. Amara could feel it. But she told herself it was nerves. Told herself that marriage was an adjustment. Told herself that love would grow. She didn't know about the bet. She didn't know that her new husband had wagered $60 million on his ability to tolerate her for a year. She didn't know that Brandon Cole, the grinning man who gave the best man speech, was counting down the days until Lucas failed. All she knew was that she had married a man who looked at her like she was a stranger. And now she was going home with him to a life she did not understand. The Montgomery mansion sat on a private estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was the kind of house Amara had only seen in magazines. 40 rooms. 12 bathrooms. Staff that appeared silently to anticipate every need. Her new bedroom was on the east wing. Lucas's bedroom was on the west wing. They had agreed to this arrangement before the wedding, both of them acknowledging that they were still getting to know each other. But walking into that beautiful empty room on her wedding night, Amara felt the loneliness like a physical weight. She changed out of her gown and into comfortable blue pajamas she had packed from home. She sat on the edge of the bed, a bed big enough for 4 people, and let herself cry. Not loud, messy sobs. Just quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks and dropped onto her folded hands. She wasn't sure why she was crying. Maybe because she had always believed in love and this didn't feel like love. Maybe because she had taken a leap of faith, and the ground was much harder than she expected. A knock at the door made her quickly wipe her eyes. "Come in." Lucas entered, still wearing his wedding suit. He looked awkward, uncertain. These were not expressions she associated with him. In the weeks they had dated, he had always seemed so confident. So in control. "I wanted to make sure you had everything you need," he said, hovering by the door. "I'm fine. Thank you." He nodded but didn't leave. His eyes moved around the room, taking in the flowers and the champagne and the luxury that meant nothing to her. "Amara," he said finally, "I know this is unconventional. I know we're still learning each other. But I want you to know that I'm going to try. I'm going to try to be a good husband." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something beneath the polished surface. That sadness she had noticed the first day. That exhaustion that hid behind his confident smile. "Why did you marry me, Lucas?" she asked softly. "The real reason." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I'm tired of empty things. And you're the least empty person I've ever met." It wasn't the whole truth. But it wasn't entirely a lie either. Because somewhere in the mess of the bet and the pride in the $60 million, Lucas had glimpsed something real in Amara Jefferson. Something that scared him and drew him in equal measure. "Get some sleep," he said, turning to leave. "Tomorrow we'll start figuring out how to live together." The next weeks were a strange dance of avoidance and proximity. They ate breakfast together in the vast dining room, making small talk about the news and the weather. They ate dinner together most nights, the conversation slowly becoming easier. Amara explored the mansion, finding her favorite spots. The library with its floor-to-ceiling windows. The garden with its roses and stone paths. The kitchen where she convinced the cook to let her make sweet potato pie one Sunday afternoon. Lucas watched her from a distance. Watched her befriend the staff with her genuine warmth. Watched her bring flowers from the garden into the house, filling the cold rooms with color and life. Watched her call her mother every evening, her voice full of love and laughter. She was changing the mansion without even trying. And she was changing him too, though he refused to admit it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Lucas came home from work to find Amara in the library, curled up in a chair with a book. She was wearing a comfortable blue sweater and reading glasses that she quickly tried to hide. "Don't," he said, surprising himself. "They look good on you." She blushed, a warmth spreading across her brown cheeks. "I'm usually wearing contacts. I didn't think you'd be home so early." Meeting ended early. He sat down in the chair across from her. "What are you reading?" She held up the book. It was a collection of poetry by Langston Hughes. "Do you like poetry?" she asked. "I don't know. I've never really read any." She smiled and something in his chest tightened. "Would you like me to read you some?" He should have said no. He should have retreated to his office and maintained the careful distance between them. But he was tired. Tired of performing. Tired of pretending. And sitting here with her, in the golden afternoon light, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt almost peaceful. "Yes," he said. "I'd like that." She read to him for an hour. Poems about dreams and rivers and the beauty of ordinary life. Her voice was soft and rhythmic, and Lucas found himself closing his eyes, letting the words wash over him. When she finally stopped, he opened his eyes to find her watching him with a gentle expression. "You fell asleep for a minute there," she said. "I didn't. I was just resting my eyes." She laughed, and the sound was warm and real and nothing like the brittle laughter of his usual world. "Okay, Mr. Montgomery. You were resting your eyes." He smiled. It was a small smile, almost reluctant, but it was genuine. Maybe the first genuine smile he had given anyone in years. They were still strangers. They were still navigating a marriage built on deception. But in that moment, in that library, something small and precious began to grow. It was too soon to call it love. Too soon to call it anything at all. But it was a beginning. And beginnings, Amara knew, were the most important part of any story. Spring arrived at the Montgomery estate with blooming flowers and longer days. 2 months had passed since the wedding, and the cold formality between Lucas and Amara had slowly begun to thaw. They had developed routines. Morning coffee together in the sunroom. Evening walks in the garden when the weather allowed. Sunday dinners that stretched longer each week as conversation flowed more easily. Lucas found himself looking forward to seeing her. The realization crept up on him slowly, like sunrise. One day he was simply tolerating her presence, and the next he was disappointed when business kept him late at the office. It was a Thursday evening when everything shifted. Lucas came home later than usual, his face tight with stress. Amara was in the kitchen helping the cook prepare dinner. She had traded her blue cardigan for a green one today, and her hair was tied back with a bright yellow scarf. "Rough day?" she asked, noticing his expression immediately. "You could say that." He dropped into a chair at the kitchen island, loosening his tie. "We're about to lose a major contract. The Thompson deal. It's worth $200 million, and it's falling apart because of some technicality I can't figure out." Amara wiped her hands on a towel and sat across from him. "Tell me about it. You don't want to hear about business problems. Try me." So he told her. He explained the contract, the complications, the legal barrier that seemed impossible to overcome. He expected her to nod politely and change the subject. Instead, she listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It sounds like the problem isn't the contract itself. It's that both parties are so focused on winning that they've forgotten why they wanted to work together in the first place." Lucas frowned. "What do you mean?" "You said Thompson Industries started negotiating because they wanted access to your distribution network, right? And you wanted their manufacturing capabilities. But now you're fighting about percentages and clauses instead of remembering that you both want the same thing. Partnership. Business is more complicated than that. Is it?" She tilted her head, her eyes thoughtful. "When my students argue, it's usually because they've gotten so caught up in being right that they've forgotten what they were actually upset about. The solution is usually to remind them of the original goal. What did they want? A turn with the blocks. To be included in the game. Once they remember that, finding a solution gets easier." Lucas stared at her. She had just compared a $200 million deal to a dispute over building blocks. And somehow, improbably, she had a point. "You're saying I should call Thompson and remind him why we started negotiating in the first place. I'm saying maybe you should stop treating him like an opponent and start treating him like a partner. Isn't partnership what you both wanted?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, pulled out his phone and walked out of the kitchen. 20 minutes later he came back. His face was different now. The tension had melted into something that looked almost like wonder. "I just had a 15-minute conversation with Thompson," he said. "We're having dinner tomorrow to renegotiate. Not as opponents. As partners." Amara smiled. "See? Third-grade wisdom applies to everything." He laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first time she had heard that sound from him, free and surprised and genuine. "Thank you," he said, and he meant it. That night, they didn't eat in the formal dining room. They ate in the kitchen, sitting side by side at the island, sharing stories and laughter. Lucas told her about his childhood, about his father who had built the company from nothing, about his mother who had raised him with love even when he didn't deserve it. Amara told him about growing up in Brooklyn, about teaching, about her dream of opening a community center for underprivileged kids someday. Her face lit up when she talked about it, her hands moving expressively, her passion evident in every word. "You really love teaching," Lucas said. "I love kids. They're honest. They haven't learned yet to hide who they really are. There's something beautiful about that." Lucas looked at her, this woman who found beauty in simplicity and wisdom in children, and felt something shift inside him. A wall he hadn't known he'd built began to crack. Over the following weeks, the changes accelerated. Lucas started coming home earlier. He sought out Amara's opinion on business matters, finding her outsider perspective surprisingly valuable. He began to enjoy their conversations, to look forward to her laugh, to notice the way light played in her dark curly hair. The Thompson deal closed successfully, better than Lucas had originally hoped. When he told Amara, her face lit up with genuine joy for him. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. 3 words. Such simple words. But they hit Lucas like a wave. When was the last time someone had been proud of him for anything other than making money? When was the last time someone had celebrated his success without calculating what it meant for them? "Have dinner with me," he said impulsively. "Not here." A real dinner. A real date. She blinked, surprised. "We're married, Lucas. We've already skipped past the dating phase. Then let's go back to it. I want to take you somewhere special. Somewhere you've always wanted to go." She considered this for a moment. Then she smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. "There's a restaurant in the city. My parents went there for their anniversary every year before my father passed. I've always wanted to go, but it's so expensive." "Then that's where we're going. Friday night." Friday came. Amara wore a beautiful maroon dress that Lucas had bought for her the day after their conversation. When she came down the stairs, he forgot how to breathe. "You look beautiful," he said, and the words felt inadequate. "Thank you." She touched the fabric of the dress. "And thank you for this. You didn't have to. I wanted to." The restaurant was everything Amara had imagined. Elegant but warm. Romantic but not stuffy. They sat by a window overlooking the city lights, and for the first time since their wedding, they felt like a real couple. They talked about everything and nothing. About dreams and fears and favorite books and worst memories. Lucas found himself sharing things he had never told anyone, secrets and insecurities he usually kept locked away. Amara listened without judgment. She asked questions that cut to the heart of things. She made him feel seen in a way no one ever had. Halfway through dessert, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I know this marriage started strangely," she said softly, "but I want you to know that I'm glad. Glad that I met you. Glad that I get to know you. Whatever this is, whatever we're building, it feels real to me." Lucas looked at their joined hands, her brown fingers intertwined with his pale ones, and felt the walls around his heart crack a little more. "It feels real to me too," he admitted. And it did. That was the terrifying part. Somewhere along the way the bet had stopped mattering. The $60 million had faded into background noise. All that mattered now was her. Her smile. Her wisdom. Her unwavering kindness. He was falling in love with his wife. And he had no idea what to do about it. The drive to Brooklyn felt like traveling to another world. Lucas watched the scenery change from the manicured estates of Greenwich to the crowded streets of the city, and finally to the modest neighborhood where Amara had grown up. It was a Saturday afternoon in late spring. Amara had invited him to meet her family, a step that felt both natural and terrifying. He had met plenty of families before, families of girlfriends and business associates, but those meetings had been performances. This felt different. This felt real. "Nervous?" Amara asked, glancing at him from the passenger seat. She was wearing a bright blue dress today, and her hair was styled in an elegant updo that made her look like royalty. "No," Lucas lied. She laughed. "Liar. It's okay. They're going to love you. You sound confident about that." "I am. Because I've told them about you. The real you. Not the billionaire. Just Lucas." The house was a modest 2-story brownstone with flower boxes in the windows. As they approached the front door, Lucas could hear music and laughter from inside. The sound was warm and inviting, so different from the silent halls of the Montgomery mansion. The door opened before they could knock, and a young man appeared. He was tall and lean, with the same warm brown skin as Amara and eyes that studied Lucas with protective intensity. "You must be Lucas," he said, his voice neutral. "And you must be Theo." Lucas extended his hand. "Amara's told me a lot about you." Theo shook his hand, his grip firm. "She's told me about you too. Mostly good things. But I'll make up my own mind." "Theo, be nice." Amara pushed past her brother and pulled Lucas inside. "Don't mind him. He's been protective of me since we were kids." The inside of the house was warm and cluttered and alive. Family photos covered every wall. The furniture was old but comfortable. The smell of something delicious floated from the kitchen, making Lucas's mouth water. A woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She was older, with gray streaks in her hair and Amara's kind eyes. This was Denise Jefferson, Amara's mother. "So this is the famous Lucas Montgomery," she said, studying him with a gaze that missed nothing. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped forward and pulled him into a hug. "Welcome to our home." Lucas froze for a moment. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him like this, without agenda or expectation. Then slowly he hugged her back. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Jefferson. Call me Denise. Or Mama if you're feeling brave. She winked and released him. Now come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready. The dining room was small compared to the one at the mansion, but it felt infinitely more welcoming. They sat around a table covered with dishes: baked chicken, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, and the famous sweet potato pie that Amara had promised. Lucas looked at the spread and felt something catch in his throat. This was a real family dinner. Not caterers and servers and silent staff. Just food made with love and people who genuinely cared about each other. So Lucas, Theo said, his voice still slightly suspicious, tell us about yourself. The stuff that's not in the magazines. Theo, Amara warned. It's okay, Lucas said. He paused, trying to find the right words. I don't know what to tell you honestly. My whole life has been about the company. Building it. Protecting it. I'm not sure there's much else to me. Denise reached over and patted his hand. That's not true. Amara's told us how you've treated her. How you respect her. How you listen to her. That tells us plenty. Lucas looked at Amara, who was smiling at him with such warmth that he felt almost unworthy of it. I try, he said quietly. Dinner was unlike anything Lucas had experienced. Conversation flowed freely, jumping from topic to topic. Denise told stories about Amara as a child, how she had once tried to teach the neighborhood cats to read. Theo talked about his job as a physical therapist, his voice full of passion for helping people. And through it all, Lucas felt something loosening inside him. Something that had been wound tight for as long as he could remember. After dinner, Denise insisted that Lucas help her with the dishes. Amara tried to intervene, but her mother waved her off. You and Theo go catch up. I want to talk to my new son-in-law. The kitchen was small and warm, and Denise handed Lucas a dish towel without ceremony. You wash, I'll dry, she said. They worked in silence for a few minutes. Then Denise spoke, her voice soft but direct. You know, when Amara told me she was marrying a billionaire, I was worried. Worried that he'd see her as something to be fixed. Something that didn't fit his world. She paused, her hand still on a plate. But that's not what I see when I look at you. What do you see? I see a man who's lost. Not in a bad way. Just searching for something. And I think maybe my daughter is helping you find it. Lucas swallowed hard. She is. She's the most genuine person I've ever met. Denise nodded, satisfied. Then treat her right. Love her the way she deserves. That's all I ask. I will. And as he said the words, Lucas realized he meant them. Truly meant them. This wasn't about the bet anymore. It wasn't about $60 million or proving something to Brandon. It was about Amara. About the woman who had walked into his empty life and filled it with color and warmth and meaning. When they left the Jefferson house that evening, the sun was setting over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Amara was quiet in the car, her hand resting on his. Thank you, she said finally. For what? For coming today. For trying. For being you. He lifted her hand and kissed it, a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. Thank you for letting me in, he replied. Your family they're wonderful. I've never experienced anything like that. Like what? Like being seen. Really seen. Not for my money or my name. Just for who I am. She squeezed his hand. That's what family does. And your family now. Whether you're ready for it or not. Lucas drove in silence for a while, thinking about her words. Family. He had a family, of course. His mother, Patricia, who he barely saw. The memory of his father, who had been gone for 3 years. But the Jeffersons offered something different. Something he hadn't known he was missing. Unconditional acceptance. Genuine love. A place to belong. And at the center of it all was Amara. This woman he had married for a bet. This woman who had become the most important person in his world without him even noticing. I'm falling for you, he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. She turned to look at him, her eyes wide. What? I'm falling for you, Amara? I know this started strangely. I know there's a lot I haven't told you. But what I feel for you now is real. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. I'm falling for you too, she admitted. I have been for a while. I was just scared to say it. Lucas pulled the car over to the side of the road. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. You never have to be scared with me, he said. Whatever happens, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to love you the way you deserve to be loved. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. Their first real kiss. Not the cold formality of their wedding, but something true. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. They stayed there on the side of the road as the sun finished setting, holding each other in the growing darkness, two people who had found something unexpected and precious. Well, the crisis came without warning. One Monday morning, Lucas arrived at Montgomery Enterprises to find his building surrounded by news vans. His phone was flooded with calls. His email was overflowing with urgent messages. The story broke in the Financial Times. A major investor had pulled out, claiming financial irregularities that turned out to be the work of a disgruntled former employee. The accusations were false, but the damage was swift and brutal. Stock prices plummeted. Partners began backing away. Decades of work crumbled in hours. Lucas sat in his office, staring at the chaos on his computer screen, feeling like the world was collapsing around him. Everything he had built. Everything his father had built. It was all falling apart. His phone rang. It was Brandon Cole. "Rough day, old friend?" Brandon's voice dripped with false sympathy. "I saw the news. Looks like your empire is crumbling." "What do you want, Brandon?" "Just checking in. Making sure you're still on track with our little arrangement. It would be such a shame if you had to give up the bet now that you actually need the money." Lucas hung up without responding. He couldn't deal with Brandon right now. He couldn't deal with any of it. The door to his office opened and Jonathan Pierce walked in. Jonathan was Lucas's business partner and oldest genuine friend, a steady presence in a world of shifting loyalties. "How bad is it?" Lucas asked. "Bad. But not impossible." Jonathan sat down across from him. "We can fight this. It'll take time and resources, but we can prove the allegations are false." "How much time?" "Months. Maybe longer." Lucas rubbed his temples. Months of fighting. Months of uncertainty. Months of watching everything he had worked for hang in the balance. "There's something else," Jonathan said carefully. "A lot of people are distancing themselves. Business partners. Social contacts. Even some friends." "What do you mean?" "I mean that the people who used to take your calls aren't answering anymore. The invitations have stopped. You're being isolated." Lucas laughed bitterly. Of course. In his world, failure was contagious. No one wanted to be associated with a falling star. "Is there anyone still standing with me?" Jonathan nodded. "Your mother." "Me." He paused. "And Amara. She called me this morning. Wanted to know how she could help." Amara. In the chaos of the morning, Lucas had almost forgotten about her. She was probably at home watching the news, seeing her husband's name dragged through the mud. He should call her. Should explain. Should probably tell her that being married to him might not be the advantage it once seemed. But when he got home that evening, exhausted and defeated, she was waiting for him in the foyer. She was wearing a simple red blouse and blue jeans, her expression calm and steady. "I made dinner," she said. "Nothing fancy. Just comfort food." "Amara, I should explain." "You don't have to explain anything." She took his hand and led him to the kitchen. "I know what's happening. I know it's bad. But you don't have to face it alone." The kitchen smelled like home cooking, something she had made herself without the staff's help. Baked chicken. Mashed potatoes. Green beans. Simple and warm and exactly what he needed. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Amara spoke. "When my father lost his job, I was 12 years old. We almost lost our house. My parents worked 3 jobs between them just to keep the lights on. It was the hardest year of our lives." Lucas looked at her. "I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know about me. But here's what I learned from that year. The people who stayed with us during the hard times were the only people who really mattered. Everyone else was just background noise." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm staying, Lucas. I don't care about the money or the mansion or any of it. I care about you. And you're worth fighting for." Something broke inside him then. The walls he had spent a lifetime building crumbled completely. He felt tears prick his eyes, and for the first time since childhood, he didn't try to stop them. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "That's not true. You deserve someone who sees the real you. And I do. I see you, Lucas. The good and the bad. And I love what I see." He stood up and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. She held him back, steady and strong, her warmth seeping into his bones. "We'll get through this," she said softly. "Together." And for the first time in his life, Lucas believed that together actually meant something. Over the following weeks, they fought the crisis side by side. Amara took a leave of absence from teaching to help manage the household during the chaos. She organized his schedule, screened his calls, and created a calm space for him to come home to each night. She also did something unexpected. She reached out to the media with a simple, dignified statement supporting her husband. Her grace under pressure, her refusal to run or hide, shifted public perception slightly. Here was a woman who believed in her husband despite everything. It wasn't much, but it mattered. Jonathan worked relentlessly to clear Lucas's name. The investigation uncovered the truth. The accusations had been fabricated by a former employee who had been fired for misconduct. One by one, the lies were exposed. Slowly, painfully, the company began to recover. Through it all, Lucas watched Amara. Watched her strength. Watched her kindness. Watched her unwavering support. He had married her for a bet. She had stayed with him out of love. The guilt was a constant presence now, a shadow that followed him everywhere. He knew he should tell her the truth. Knew that their entire relationship was built on a lie. But every time he tried to speak, the words stuck in his throat. Because he loved her. He loved her more than he had ever loved anything. And he was terrified of losing her. One night, after a particularly brutal day of meetings, he came home to find her waiting with hot tea and a warm smile. "Bad day?" she asked. "They're all bad days lately. But coming home to you makes them better." She smiled and kissed his cheek. "That's what I'm here for." He took her face in his hands and looked into her eyes. "Amara, I need to tell you something. Something important." Her smile faded slightly. "What is it?" The words were on his lips. "The truth. The bet. Everything." But then his phone rang. Jonathan with urgent news about the case. And the moment passed. "Never mind," Lucas said, releasing her. "It can wait." But it couldn't wait forever. And deep down he knew that the longer he waited, the worse the eventual reckoning would be. Summer arrived in full force, and with it came a measure of peace. The crisis at Montgomery Enterprises had been resolved. Lucas's name had been cleared. The company was rebuilding, stronger than before. But more importantly, the marriage that had begun as a bet had become something real. Something beautiful. Something Lucas treasured more than all his billions. He planned a trip for Amara's birthday. Not to Paris or Tokyo or any of the exotic destinations his wealth could afford. Instead, he took her to Martha's Vineyard, to a cozy bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean. "I can't believe you remembered I wanted to come here," Amara said as they walked along the beach, her hand in his. She was wearing a flowing green sundress, and the ocean breeze played with her curly hair. "You mentioned it once. Back when we first started getting to know each other. You said your parents had always wanted to visit but never could afford it. That was months ago. You remembered that?" "I remember everything about you." She stopped walking and turned to face him. The setting sun painted the sky in soft pastels, and her face was radiant in the gentle light. "Lucas Montgomery," she said softly, "who knew you were such a romantic?" "Only for you." He pulled her close. "Only ever for you." They spent 3 days on the island, away from phones and business and the pressures of their regular lives. They ate lobster at waterfront restaurants. They explored antique shops and art galleries. They walked on the beach at sunset and talked about their dreams. One evening, sitting on the porch of their cottage with a blanket wrapped around them, Lucas made a decision. "I want to make this real," he said. Amara looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "Our marriage. I know it started as an arrangement, but I love you, Amara. I love you more than I ever thought possible. And I want us to have a real marriage. No more separate bedrooms. No more pretending. Just us." Her eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. I have for a long time. I was just waiting for you to catch up." He laughed and kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. "So," she said, "does this mean I finally get to move my things to the West Wing? This means you get to take over the whole house if you want. It's always been empty without you." That night they shared a room for the first time. And though Lucas had been with other women before, this was different. This was making love. This was two souls connecting, two hearts beating as one. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Amara's head on his chest, Lucas felt complete. For the first time in his life he felt like he had everything that mattered. But even in that moment of perfect happiness, the guilt whispered in the back of his mind. The bet. The lie. The truth he still hadn't told. He pushed it away. Tomorrow, he told himself. He would deal with it tomorrow. When they returned from Martha's Vineyard, Lucas made another decision. He needed to cut Brandon Cole out of his life. Their friendship had always been toxic. Brandon brought out the worst in him, encouraged his darkest impulses. The bet was proof of that. It was time to move on. He called Brandon and asked to meet. They sat across from each other at an exclusive club, the same kind of place where they had made their original wager. "I'm done," Lucas said simply. "The bet is off. I'm not playing your games anymore." Brandon's expression darkened. "You can't just quit. We had a deal." "I don't care about the deal. I don't care about the 60 million. I love my wife. I love her more than anything. And I'm not going to let you hold that over me anymore." "You love her?" Brandon laughed, harsh and mocking. "You married her for a bet. That's not love. That's performance. It started that way. But it's not that anymore. What I feel for Amara is real. More real than anything I've ever experienced." Brandon leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Does she know? Does your precious wife know that you married her to win a wager?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "She doesn't know. But I'm going to tell her." "Are you?" "Because here's the thing, Lucas. If you tell her, you might lose her. But if you don't tell her and she finds out some other way..." Brandon smiled. "Well, that would be much worse, wouldn't it?" "Is that a threat?" "It's a prediction. I know you. You're going to keep putting it off. Keep convincing yourself that tomorrow is a better day for honesty. And eventually, the truth is going to come out. And when it does, I'll be there to watch." Lucas stood up, his hands clenched at his sides. "Stay away from my wife. Stay away from my life. We're done." He walked out of the club without looking back. But Brandon's words echoed in his mind, a poisonous whisper that wouldn't be silenced. He should tell her. He knew he should tell her. But every time he looked at her face, so full of trust and love, the words died in his throat. Just a little more time, he told himself. Just a little more time to make her understand how much she meant to him. Then he would tell her. Then he would explain. But time was running out. And the truth, like all buried things, was slowly working its way to the surface. Have you ever loved someone so much that you were terrified of losing them? The fear of hurting those we care about can sometimes make us hold on to secrets longer than we should. If you're wondering whether Lucas will find the courage to tell Amara the truth before it's too late, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter of their story. And let us know in the comments, should Lucas confess or wait for the perfect moment? Patricia Montgomery arrived at the mansion on a Tuesday morning, unannounced as always. She was an elegant woman in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Lucas had been avoiding his mother for months. Not because he didn't love her, but because she had a way of seeing through his pretenses that made him uncomfortable. And right now he had a lot of pretenses to see through. "Mother," he said, kissing her cheek as she swept into the foyer. "What brings you here? Do I need a reason to visit my only son?" She looked around the house with approval. "The place looks different. Warmer. Lived in. That would be Amara's influence." Patricia's gaze sharpened. "Ah yes. The mysterious wife I've barely been allowed to meet. Speaking of which, where is she?" "In the garden. She likes to read out there in the mornings." "Then let's go find her. I think it's time I got to know my daughter-in-law properly." They found Amara in the garden, curled up on a bench with a book in her lap. She was wearing a bright blue dress that contrasted beautifully with her brown skin, and her face was peaceful in the morning light. Patricia stopped at the edge of the garden and studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, a genuine smile that Lucas hadn't seen from her in years. "She's lovely," Patricia said softly. "She is. No, I mean, she's really lovely. There's something about her. A light. I can see why you fell for her." Lucas looked at his mother, surprised. Patricia Montgomery was not known for sentiment. She was practical, shrewd, and slow to approve of anyone. "You're not disappointed?" he asked. "She's not exactly what you expected for a daughter-in-law." "What I expected was another Rebecca Torres. Another social climber using you for your money. What I see is a woman who genuinely cares about you. Do you know how rare that is?" Before Lucas could respond, Amara looked up and spotted them. Her face brightened with a warm smile. "Mrs. Montgomery," she said, standing up. "Lucas didn't tell me you were coming." "That's because Lucas didn't know." Patricia walked forward and, to everyone's surprise, embraced Amara warmly. "It's wonderful to finally meet you properly, dear. And please call me Patricia." The three of them had tea in the sunroom. Patricia asked Amara about her teaching, her family, her life before Lucas. And Amara answered openly, without pretense or performance. Lucas watched his mother warm to his wife, watched the two most important women in his life connect, and felt hope and fear in equal measure. Hope that his new life could work. Fear of what would happen when the truth came out. After tea, Patricia asked to speak with Lucas alone. They walked to his father's old study, A room that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and old books. "You love her," Patricia said. It wasn't a question. More than anything. "Then why do you look so guilty?" Lucas froze. "What do you mean?" "I'm your mother, Lucas. I know when something is eating at you. And something is definitely eating at you. Is it the business troubles? Those are over. Then what is it?" You wanted to tell her. Wanted to confess everything, the bet, the deception, the terrible way this had all started. But the words wouldn't come. "I made a mistake," he said finally. "A long time ago. Before I really knew her. And I'm afraid that when she finds out, I'll lose her." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Your father made mistakes too. Things he never told anyone. But I knew. I always knew. And I loved him anyway because what mattered wasn't the mistake. It was who he became after. What if who I became isn't enough? Then you make it enough. You spend the rest of your life making it enough." She took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Tell her the truth, Lucas. Whatever it is. Tell her before someone else does. Because secrets have a way of destroying everything they touch." He nodded, knowing she was right. Knowing he had run out of time. But before he could find the courage, Brandon Cole found him first. It happened 3 days later. Lucas came home from work to find Amara sitting in the living room, her face pale and tear-streaked. In her hand was a letter. "Someone left this on the doorstep," she said, her voice hollow. It says you married me for a bet." Lucas's blood turned to ice. "Amara, let me explain. Is it true?" Her voice cracked. "Did you bet someone that you could marry an obese woman and tolerate her for a year?" He opened his mouth to deny it. To explain. To somehow make her understand that everything had changed, that the bet meant nothing, that his love was real. But the words that came out were the only honest ones he could manage. "It's true. Started that way. But Amara, please listen to me." She stood up, her hands trembling. "You used me. You saw me and thought I was some kind of challenge. Some kind of game. That was before I knew you. Before I fell in love with you. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? Our entire marriage is built on a lie. Not our marriage. The beginning was a lie. But everything after, every moment we've shared, every word I've spoken for months, that's been real. I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone or anything." She was crying now, tears streaming down her beautiful face. "I need to go. I can't be here right now. Amara, please." But she was already walking out the door. Out of the mansion. Out of his life. Lucas stood in the empty living room, the letter crumpled in his fist, feeling like everything good had just slipped through his fingers. He had been a fool. A coward. And now he had lost the only thing that mattered. The next 3 days were the longest of Lucas's life. Amara was staying with her mother in Brooklyn. She wouldn't answer his calls. She wouldn't respond to his messages. The silence was a weight on his chest that made it hard to breathe. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He wandered through the empty mansion, past the room she had filled with flowers and warmth, and felt the coldness returning. The coldness he had lived with before she came into his life. On the second day he called Jonathan Pierce. "I need your help," Lucas said, his voice raw. "I need to fix this." Jonathan listened as Lucas explained everything. The bet. The lies. The way it had all unraveled. That's a lot," Jonathan said finally. "I wish you had told me sooner." "I know. I was ashamed. I am ashamed." "What do you want to do now?" "I want to prove to her that my love is real. That I've changed. But I don't know how." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe the first step is confronting Brandon. Publicly. Showing Amara that you're willing to burn that bridge completely. He'll deny everything. Then make it impossible for him to deny. Get evidence. Make a statement. Show her that you're choosing her over everything else." Lucas nodded slowly. It was a start. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. He spent the next 24 hours gathering evidence. Emails from when the bet was first made. Bank records showing the amounts discussed. Text messages from Brandon referencing the wager. He compiled everything into a file that left no room for doubt. Then he called a press conference. The media gathered in the conference room at Montgomery Enterprises, cameras flashing, reporters buzzing with curiosity. Lucas stood at the podium, feeling more exposed than he ever had in his life. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I've called this conference to make a confession. Not about business. About my personal life." The room went silent. 1 year ago I entered into a bet with Brandon Cole. The terms were simple and cruel. I was to marry a woman who didn't fit my usual standards and tolerate her for 1 year. If I succeeded, I would win $60 million. The reporters erupted with questions, but Lucas held up his hand. The woman I married is Amara Jefferson. She is the most extraordinary person I have ever known. She is kind and wise and good in ways I never knew existed. And I married her thinking she was a game to be won. He paused, his voice catching. But something happened. I fell in love with her. Real love. The kind my father had for my mother. The kind I never thought I was capable of. And now I've lost her, because she discovered the truth before I had the courage to tell her myself. He looked directly into the cameras. Brandon Cole, if you're watching this, I want you to know that I'm done. The bet is void. I don't want your money. I don't want your friendship. I don't want anything from you except to never see your face again. He turned to address Amara directly, hoping she was watching somewhere. Amara, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fully repair. But I want you to know that everything I felt for you was real. Every kiss. Every conversation. Every moment we shared. I love you. I will always love you. And if you can find it in your heart to give me another chance, I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouts of reporters. He had said what he needed to say. Now all he could do was wait. The response was immediate. The story went viral within hours. People were divided. Some called him a monster. Others saw a man genuinely trying to make amends. Opinion didn't matter to Lucas. Only one person's opinion mattered. That evening his phone rang. It was Theo Jefferson. What do you want? Theo's voice was cold, protective. I want to see her. To explain in person. She doesn't want to see you. Please, Theo. I know you have every reason to hate me. I hate myself for what I did. But I love your sister. I love her more than my own life. Please give me the chance to prove it. There was a long silence. Then Theo sighed. She's at the park near our house. The one with the big oak tree. She goes there when she needs to think. He paused. Don't make me regret this. Lucas was in his car before Theo finished speaking. He found her sitting on a bench beneath the oak tree, just as Theo had said. She was wearing a simple blue sweater, her hair pulled back, her face tired and sad. She looked up as he approached, and for a moment, he saw hope flicker in her eyes before she buried it. May I sit? He asked. She nodded, not speaking. He sat beside her, close enough to reach but not touching. The evening air was cool, and the sounds of the city seemed far away. I saw your press conference, she said finally. That was brave. It was the least I could do. You deserve to know that I'm not hiding anymore. Why did you do it? The bet, I mean. Why did you think that was acceptable? Lucas closed his eyes, forcing himself to face the question honestly. Because I was empty. Because I had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. Because Brandon saw my weakness and exploited it. Because I was too arrogant to see that I was the one being played. He opened his eyes and looked at her. None of that excuses what I did. Nothing excuses it. But I need you to understand that the man who made that bet is not the man sitting here now. You changed me, Amara. You showed me what love really means. What kindness really means. What it means to be truly seen. Tears were falling down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. How do I know this is real? She whispered. How do I know you're not just performing again? You can't know, he admitted. Not for certain. All I can do is show you, every day for the rest of our lives. I'll prove it with actions, not words. I'll spend every moment earning back your trust. If you'll let me. She was silent for a long time. The sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Then, slowly she turned to face him. The bet ends when? She asked. It ended the moment I fell in love with you. But officially 3 months from now. Then here's what we're going to do. Her voice was steady, stronger than before. You're going to court me. Properly. Like we should have done from the beginning. No mansion. No expensive gifts. Just you and me figuring out if what we have is real. And if it is? Then we start over. A real marriage. Built on truth this time. He reached out tentatively and she let him take her hand. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. Whatever you need. For as long as it takes. She squeezed his hand and for the first time in days he felt like he could breathe again. The courtship was unlike anything Lucas had ever experienced. They went back to the beginning. Coffee at the same little shop in Brooklyn where they had first met. Walks in the park. Simple dinners at family restaurants. No limos. No champagne. Just two people learning to trust each other again. It wasn't easy. Amara's walls were up and Lucas understood why. He had broken her trust in the most fundamental way possible. Rebuilding that trust would take time. But he was patient. For the first time in his life, he was willing to wait for something worth having. 3 weeks after their reconciliation, Amara came to dinner at the mansion. It was the first time she had been back since discovering the truth. Lucas had cooked the meal himself. It wasn't fancy. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a simple salad. But he had put love into every bite, and Amara noticed. "You made this yourself?" she asked, surprised. "I've been learning. One of many changes I'm trying to make." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "It's good. Really good. I had a good teacher. Your mother gave me some tips." Amara's eyes widened. "You talked to my mother?" "I've been going to Brooklyn twice a week. Having lunch with her. Learning how to cook. Learning about you. About your family. She never told me. I asked her not to. I wanted to prove myself through actions, not announcements." Amara was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. "You're really trying, aren't you? I've never tried harder at anything in my life." Over the following weeks, the walls continued to crumble. Amara moved back into the mansion, though they kept separate rooms for a while longer. They talked every night, deep conversations about fears and dreams and the wounds they carried. Lucas told her about his childhood. About growing up with more money than love. About his father, who had been distant and demanding until the very end. About the emptiness that had followed him like a shadow for as long as he could remember. Amara told him about her own struggles. About growing up plus size in a world that valued thinness. About the cruel comments and the self-doubt. About learning to love herself despite everything. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known," Lucas told her one night. "Not despite how you look. Because of it. Because of everything you are." She cried then, tears of healing instead of pain. And he held her, grateful beyond words that she had given him this second chance. The months passed and winter melted into spring. Lucas officially withdrew from the bet, sending Brandon a formal notice that the wager was null and void. Brandon tried to claim the money anyway, tried to spread rumors and cause trouble, but Lucas had already made his truth public. Brandon's influence shattered like glass. Patricia Montgomery became a regular visitor to the mansion, and she and Amara developed a genuine friendship. Denise and Theo came too, filling the cold rooms with warmth and laughter. For the first time, the Montgomery estate felt like a home. On a bright day in June, exactly 1 year after their original wedding, Lucas proposed again. He didn't do it in a fancy restaurant or on a tropical beach. He did it in the garden of the Jefferson home in Brooklyn, surrounded by roses that Denise had planted decades ago. He got down on one knee holding a simple ring. Not the 4-carat diamond from before. A modest sapphire that matched the blue dress Amara had worn on their first real date. "Amara Jefferson," he said, "I married you once out of arrogance and pride. This time I want to marry you out of love and gratitude. You saved me from myself. You showed me what really matters. Will you marry me again? For real this time? Forever?" She was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The second wedding was everything the first should have been. It was held in Denise's backyard, with only 50 guests instead of 500. Theo walked Amara down the aisle. Grace Adams served as maid of honor. Jonathan Pierce stood as best man. Amara wore a flowing white dress with touches of blue. Her natural hair was crowned with flowers. She was radiant, glowing with a happiness that seemed to fill the entire garden. Lucas wore a simple navy suit, no tie. His eyes never left his bride as she walked toward him. When she reached his side, he took her hands in his and the world fell away. The vows they exchanged were their own words. "I promise to be honest with you always," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to love you with every part of myself. I promise to be the man you deserve today and every day after. I promise to believe in you," Amara replied. "I promise to forgive the past and embrace our future. I promise to love you not for who you were, but for who you are and who we're becoming together." When they kissed, the small crowd erupted in cheers. Denise was crying. Patricia was crying. Even Theo was quietly wiping his eyes. The reception was simple and joyful. There was music and dancing and Amara's famous sweet potato pie. Lucas danced with his mother. Amara danced with Theo. And when the night grew late and the stars came out, they danced with each other, swaying slowly beneath the Brooklyn sky. "Thank you," Lucas whispered into her ear. "For what?" "For seeing me. For saving me. For loving me when I didn't deserve it." She pulled back and looked into his eyes. "You always deserved love, Lucas. You just needed someone to show you how." They spent their honeymoon not in Monaco or Paris, but in a cottage on the Jersey shore. They walked on the beach. They cooked together. They planned their future, a future built on truth and trust and the unshakable foundation of real love. When they returned home, Lucas made one more announcement. He was stepping back from Montgomery Enterprises, leaving day-to-day operations to Jonathan Pierce. He wanted more time for what mattered. More time for family. More time for the community center Amara had always dreamed of opening. Together, they broke ground on the Jefferson Community Center a year later. It was built in Brooklyn, not far from where Amara had grown up. It offered after-school programs, tutoring, art classes, and support for underprivileged families. Amara ran the education programs. Lucas handled the funding and logistics. They were partners in every sense of the word. 3 years after their second wedding, they welcomed their first child. A daughter named Hope. She had her mother's kind eyes and her father's stubborn chin. She was perfect. Lucas held his daughter for the first time in the hospital room, Amara exhausted but glowing beside him, and felt something he had never felt before. Complete. Fulfilled. Home. We made it, Amara said softly. We did. Against all odds. It wasn't just odds. It was choice. You chose to change. You chose to be better. That's what made the difference. He looked at his wife, this extraordinary woman who had transformed his life, and knew she was right. Love wasn't just feeling. It was action. It was choice. It was showing up, every day, and being the person your loved ones deserved. Outside the hospital window, the sun was rising over New York City. A new day. A new beginning. And for Lucas and Amara Montgomery, the best was yet to come.